Okay, vitamin D. You've probably heard about vitamin D your entire life. Get some sunshine, drink your milk, take your vitamins. Vitamin D is good for your bones. But vitamin D is actually way more interesting than that because vitamin D is called a vitamin, but inside your body, it also acts like a hormone. Your body can actually make vitamin D when sunlight hits your skin. And then your body takes that vitamin D, changes it into forms it can use, and eventually uses it to send messages throughout your body. It affects your bones, your muscles, your immune system, your cells, and there are vitamin D receptors, basically little places where vitamin D can deliver its message in many different parts of that body. And if you have multiple sclerosis, vitamin D gets even more interesting because researchers have been studying the relationship between vitamin D, sunlight, and MS for many, many years. They've noticed some really interesting patterns. And we now have newer research that gives us even more to talk about. So today, I want to answer the questions I think normal people actually want answered. What is vitamin D? Why can we get it from the sun? How can something be a vitamin and act like a hormone? What does vitamin D actually do inside your body? What does it have to do with your immune system? What do we know about vitamin D and multiple sclerosis? And probably the biggest question, if you have MS, how much vitamin D should you actually be taking? Because I've seen people recommend some pretty enormous doses of vitamin D online, and I don't want us blindly doing that. I want us to actually understand what we're putting into our bodies and why. So grab your vitamin bucket if you have one, and let's talk about vitamin D. So for part one, we're going to discuss how can sunshine become a vitamin? This is probably my favorite part of vitamin D because think about how weird that actually is. You walk outside, sunlight hits your skin, and your body starts making vitamin D? That's amazing. There is a substance naturally present in your skin that's related to cholesterol. And when the right kind of sunlight hits it, a chemical reaction begins, and eventually your body makes vitamin D3. That's the same D3 you probably recognize from supplement bottles. But your body isn't finished with it yet. Think of it like something in a kitchen. You have the ingredients, but they're not ready to serve. The vitamin D goes through your liver where your body changes it. Then it can go through another change, especially involving your kidneys, until your body has the active form it can actually use to send signals. Now, I'm deliberately not going to make you memorize all the scientific names for these different forms. You don't need to. Here's what I want you to remember. Sunlight hits your skin. Your body starts making vitamin D. Your body processes it, and eventually, vitamin D can act almost like a messenger inside of your body. That's where the hormone part comes in. So, for part two, wait, is it a vitamin or a hormone? So, which is it, right? We're going to talk about that for part two. A vitamin or a hormone? Well, it's kind of both. We call vitamin D a vitamin because it's an essential nutrient, and we can get it through food and supplements. But the active form of vitamin D behaves like a hormone. And hormones are basically messengers. They carry instructions. Think about your thyroid hormones, estrogen and insulin. These are chemical messengers that your body uses to communicate. Vitamin D has its own receptors throughout the body, and I think of receptors almost like locks. Vitamin D is carrying a key, and it reaches certain cells, connects to the receptor, and basically says, here's the message. And that message can influence what the cell does. Now, once I understood that, vitamin D became so much more interesting to me because we're not just talking about take this because it's good for your bones. We're talking about a substance that becomes part of your body's communication system. And that communication reaches a lot of places. So for part three, let's talk about what does vitamin D actually do? Let's start with the thing everybody knows, your bones. Vitamin D helps your body absorb calcium. You can eat calcium, but your body still has to be able to absorb it and use it. Vitamin D helps make that possible, and that's why severe vitamin D deficiency can eventually cause problems with bones. But calcium isn't just about bones. Your body uses calcium for things like muscle movement and nerve communication too, which brings us to your muscles. Vitamin D is important for healthy muscle function. And that gets my attention as somebody living with MS because when you're already thinking about strength and mobility and balance and falling, staying active and maintaining independence, you don't want to ignore something that's important for both your muscles and your bones. And then we get to the part that's really interesting to me, your immune system. Vitamin D interacts with your immune system. And I want to be careful about the language here. You'll hear people say, vitamin D boosts your immune system. And that's not really how I like to think about it, especially with autoimmune disease. Because if you have an autoimmune disease, you're probably not sitting around thinking, could somebody please make my immune system more reactive? No, of course not. What we're interested in is healthy immune regulation. I think of it almost like a thermostat. You don't want your house at 110 degrees. No, of course not. But you don't want it at 30 degrees either. You want the system responding appropriately. Your immune system needs to know when to respond and how strongly to respond and when to just calm back down. Vitamin D appears to be involved in some of those immune regulating processes. And now you can probably see why researchers are studying autoimmune diseases and have started paying attention to this. So for part four, let's talk about what does it have to do with MS, right? This is where the story gets really interesting. Why are researchers looking at it? Researchers noticed something strange about multiple sclerosis a long time ago. MS isn't equally a common thing everywhere in the world. Historically, MS has generally been more common in places farther away from the equator. Think about what changes as you move farther away from the equator. One of those things is sunlight, especially during certain parts of the year. Less strong sunlight can mean less opportunity for your skin to make vitamin D. And researchers started asking, could sunlight have something to do with MS? Could vitamin D have something to do with MS? Now, and this is extremely important, that does not mean lack of vitamin D causes MS. We can't say that. We don't know that. There are many things involved in MS: genetics, the immune system, environment, certain infections, lifestyle factors, probably combinations of things we still don't completely understand. But researchers started noticing that vitamin D kept showing up in this conversation. Studies have also found relationships between lower vitamin D levels and MS disease activity. Again, that doesn't automatically prove that low vitamin D caused the disease activity. That's one of the hardest things about health research. Sometimes two things happen together without one necessarily causing the other. So researchers needed better studies. And that's where some newer research becomes really interesting. So for part five, I do want to talk about this newer study. It was published in 2025. and it looked at people who had experienced a first neurological event that strongly suggested they might be developing MS. And researchers then divided these people into groups. One group received vitamin D, and the other received a placebo, which is basically the comparison group. They received something that they thought was vitamin D, but wasn't. That's a placebo. And they followed them up for 2 years. Now, here's where I need everybody to listen carefully. The vitamin D dose used in this study was very high. They used 100,000 IU every 2 weeks. Now, this is not me telling you to take that much. Please don't hear a number from a research study and immediately recreate the experiment in your kitchen. Don't do it. The researchers were studying a specific dose in specific people under specific conditions. But here's what makes the study interesting. The people receiving vitamin D had less overall disease activity based on the study's combined measurement, which included MS relapses and new activity on brain and spinal imaging. So about 60% of the vitamin D group showed disease activity, compared with about 74% of the placebo group. And that's a meaningful difference. Now, some of the imaging results also favored vitamin D, but here's the other side. Vitamin D didn't significantly improve everything researchers measured. They didn't find a significant difference in clinical relapses by themselves. And they also didn't find significant improvements in things like disability, fatigue, like quality of life, or depression or anxiety. And that is why I want us learning how to read health headlines carefully. Because somebody could look at this study and make a video saying, new study proves vitamin D stops MS. No, that's not what it proved. But could I look at this research and say, wow, vitamin D contributes and continues to be incredibly interesting in MS research. And now we have stronger evidence suggesting that it may influence disease activity in certain people, especially early in the disease. Absolutely, that's exciting. We can be excited without exaggerating. So for part 6, I want to discuss how much vitamin D should I take if I have MS. Whew, okay, here's the question everybody wants answered. How much? How much? How much? Just tell me how much. How much should I take? Should I take 5? Should I take 10? Should I take 20? 100,000? Oh my gosh. Okay, I know this answer. I don't know if you'll be satisfied with, I could just say take exactly 5,000 IU. That's what my neurologist initially told me to do the first time I was recommended to take it. But there isn't one magic dose for every person with MS. Because first, I want to know how much vitamin D is already in your body. And thankfully, we can measure that. There's a blood test for vitamin D. You'll probably see it written as something like 25 hydroxy vitamin D. You don't need to remember that name. Just remember the vitamin D blood test. Because imagine two people. One person's vitamin D level is extremely low, and one person's vitamin D level is already healthy. Should those two people automatically take exactly the same amount? Well, probably not. That's why testing can be so helpful. For most adults, 4,000 IU per day is considered the upper daily intake limit for routine use without medical supervision. I want to emphasize something. Upper limit does not mean recommended dose. It doesn't mean everybody should take 4,000. It means that the general upper limit established for adults for routine intake. Depending on someone's blood level, health, medications, and medical situation, a healthcare provider may recommend something different. Someone who is deficient may sometimes be given a much higher dose for a period of time. And some MS specialists recommend or use vitamin D supplementation within different ranges depending on the patient. But the point isn't MS equals blank number of IU. The better question is, what is my vitamin D level currently? And what amount makes sense for my body? This is a much smarter way to approach supplementation. More is not always better. This is really important because I think supplements have this strange reputation. People understand why you shouldn't take 40 Tylenol, but vitamins? There's sometimes this idea that if 1,000 is good, 10,000 must be amazing. That's not how biology works. Vitamin D is stored in the body, and taking way too much vitamin D over an extended period of time can cause your calcium levels to become dangerously high. And that can cause real problems. You can become nauseated, weak, confused, extremely thirsty. You can urinate excessively, or you could develop kidney stones. And in severe cases, vitamin D toxicity can damage your kidneys and cause other serious problems. So this isn't a vitamin where I want you thinking, more, more, more. I want you thinking, enough. And there's a difference. Our bodies need enough. So for part 8, let's talk about if you can just go outside. If sunlight makes vitamin D, why take a supplement at all? Why don't we just all go outside? Well, it's because vitamin D production from sunlight, it isn't exactly the same for everybody. Where you live matters, and the season matters. The time of day matters. Your age can matter. Your skin pigmentation matters, like the color of your skin, it matters. How much of your skin is exposed matters. And if you're sitting inside next to a sunny window, you're not necessarily getting the same vitamin D producing UV light you would get if you were outside. Sometimes the glass can filter the light in such a way. But I also don't want anybody hearing this and thinking, Rebecca told me to go outside and bake in the sun. No, please don't burn yourself trying to make vitamin D. We still need to protect our skin. And I actually love this because it fits into something I talk about all the time, which is balance. Sunlight can be good. Vitamin D is important. Skin protection is important. Healthy aging is important. All of those things can be true at the same time. Health doesn't have to be extreme. So keep in mind, a little bit of sun. Generally 15 to 20 minutes with your arms, legs, just a good amount of skin exposed gives you enough adequate sunlight for your body to develop the vitamin D that it needs. So start with that. Just try to get 15 or 20 minutes outside with some sun. What about food though? We can also get vitamin D through food. Like fatty fish are some of the best natural sources. Things like salmon, trout, sardines, egg yolks contain some vitamin D. And then we have foods that have vitamin D added to them, like milk, which is probably one of the most recognizable forms. But it's often added to it, right? We're putting the vitamin D into the milk. Some plant milks are also fortified with vitamin D, and some cereals and other foods are fortified too. But vitamin D can be difficult to get in large amounts from food alone, and that's part of why vitamin D supplements are so common. And vitamin D is what we call a fat soluble vitamin. All that really means for our conversation is that our body handles it differently than some other vitamins. Taking vitamin D with a meal that contains some healthy fat can help your body absorb it. I want to talk for part 10 about your brain. What about your brain? Let's talk about something I know a lot of people are going to wonder about. Because if you've ever experienced MS fatigue or brain fog, you're probably thinking, could vitamin D help my brain? Maybe you've also heard people connect vitamin D deficiency with depression. There are vitamin D receptors in parts of the nervous system, and researchers have found relationships between low vitamin D and things like mood problems or cognitive issues. But here's where we need to stay grounded. That doesn't mean taking vitamin D automatically fixes depression, and it doesn't mean it cures brain fog. It doesn't mean everybody who's exhausted is vitamin D deficient. Studies looking at whether vitamin D supplements actually improve mood or thinking have had mixed results. So if you're dealing with fatigue, brain fog, low mood, weakness, It is absolutely worth knowing whether you're deficient, but don't automatically assume this symptom means I need more vitamin D, especially those with MS. Our symptoms can have a lot of different causes, and sometimes several things are happening at once. But for most people, even those without vitamin D, most people are low. I mean, without MS, most people are low in vitamin D. So, for part 11, I want to talk about why I do care so much about nutrition and MS. It's where it becomes personal for me. You know, when you're diagnosed with something like MS, suddenly you're living inside of a body that you just don't completely understand anymore. At least that's how it felt for me. I wanted answers. I wanted to know why. Why is my body doing this? What can I do? What can I control? And what am I eating? What am I missing? What does my body need? What can I change? What can I support? And that curiosity has followed me throughout my health journey. And that's one of the reasons I care so much about nutrition and fasting and vitamins and food and lifestyle. Not because I think there's one magic vitamin that's going to cure everything. There isn't. I'm sorry, there isn't. And it's not because I think somebody caused their immune disease by eating the wrong number of calories or carbs or what? No. Or, ooh, maybe they forgot to take their no, I don't believe that. I care about these things because this is my body. And all of these things are a part of what creates my body. I'm living in it every single day. And if there's something my body genuinely needs to function properly, I want to understand it. Vitamin D is a perfect example. Something as ordinary as sunlight hits your skin. Your body captures that opportunity, starts making something, changes it again, and eventually turns it into a messenger that can communicate with cells throughout your body. Think about that. Your body is doing things like this all day without you even realizing it, and that's incredible. Honestly, for me, just learning how intricately our bodies are designed makes me appreciate them even more. So, what should we actually do? If you have MS and you're watching this because you want to know what to do about vitamin D, here's where I would start. First, know your level. If you're able to have your vitamin D checked, that's much more useful than just randomly guessing. Second, look at what you're already getting. Are you taking a multivitamin? Does it contain vitamin D? Are you taking a separate supplement? How much? Do you eat foods fortified with vitamin D? How much time are you actually spending outdoors? Because sometimes people are taking vitamin D from three different products and don't even realize how much they're getting altogether. So, third, if your level is low, talk with your doctor or healthcare provider about how much you need to bring it back into a healthy range. And especially talk with someone before you start experimenting with really high doses, because the amount used in a research study isn't automatically the amount you should take at home. And finally, don't chase the highest possible vitamin D number. We're not trying to max out a scorecard. We're trying to give the body what it needs. Here's what I want you to remember from this whole video. Vitamin D is much more than the little sunshine vitamin we learned about growing up. Your body can make it from sunlight. You can get it from certain foods. You can take it as a supplement. And once your body processes it, vitamin D acts much like a hormone, a messenger communicating with cells throughout your body. It helps your body use calcium. It supports your bones. It matters for your muscles. It interacts with your immune system. And researchers are continuing to study its fascinating relationship with multiple sclerosis. Does vitamin D cure MS? No. Do we know that everybody with MS should take massive amounts of vitamin D? No. Is vitamin D something I think people living with MS should understand and pay attention to? Absolutely. And that's really what this vitamin series is about. Not collecting supplements and not believing every health claim we see online, not being afraid, understanding what these nutrients actually are, understanding what our bodies do with them, and making informed decisions about our health. If you're new here, I'm Rebecca, and this is You Are Worth It Health. I live with multiple sclerosis myself, and on this channel, we talk about MS, autoimmune disease, nutrition, fasting, vitamins, healthy aging, skincare, and taking care of the whole person, body, mind, and spirit. And this vitamin bucket that I have that you may have seen before is going to keep making appearances because there is a lot more in here for us to talk about. Vitamin D is only one piece, and that's one of the biggest things I've learned about health. There usually isn't one magic thing, it's the bigger picture: nutrition, movement, rest, stress, sunlight, food, relationships, faith, caring for our bodies, and learning to listen when our bodies are trying so hard to tell us something. If you want to go deeper into my personal experience living with multiple sclerosis and everything I've learned along the way, I wrote Finally Understand Multiple Sclerosis. And I'll put it in the link below in the description. You can get it on Amazon. And I also have my fasting book. I'll link that below if you want to understand why fasting became such an important part of my own health journey. And you can find more at my website, the letter U, the letter R, worthithealth.com. URworthitHealth.com. Subscribe if you want to keep going with me in this series and on my channel. We're going to be talking about so many things and taking each vitamin, each supplement one at a time and discussing, what does this vitamin actually do? Do we really need it? Where do we get it from? How much do we need? And what does the science actually say? Because I don't want you memorizing complicated medical words. I want you to understand your body. I'll see you in the next one right here.